All right, so hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive into Divis Laboratories.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we've got their latest quarterly reports here.
Okay.
So not just the official financials, but also the press release that came out.
hmm
And this is really cool. We actually got a hold of the transcript from their earnings call,
Oh, wow.
so we can see how the analysts were grilling them about the results.
Yeah, the earnings calls are always where you get like the real details.
Yeah, exactly. I'm excited to kind of dig into it and see what we can uncover.
Yeah, me too. Divi's is a really fascinating company to watch, you know? They've got this unique kind of two-sided approach to the pharmaceutical world.
Oh, how so?
Well, most people know them for their generic drugs.
Right.
You know, those more affordable versions of the big brand name medications.
Yes.
But what many folks might not realize is they're also giants in what's called custom synthesis.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that.
So that's where they're creating the specialized ingredients, the building blocks for other companies' brand new drugs.
So they're not just competing on price, they're actually involved in the development of cutting-edge medicine.
Exactly. And that dual focus, I think, really contributes to their success. And it's something that I think we'll want to keep coming back to as we look at their results.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's start with the big picture then. How did they do this quarter? What are like the top line numbers?
Well, their consolidated total income for Q3 was 2,401 crores,
Okay.
which is a significant jump from 1,950 crores at the same time last year.
So they're growing.
Yeah, and not just growing revenue, their profit after taxes is also up.
Nice.
It was a 589 crores compared to just 358 crores last year.
So they're getting more efficient too.
It seems so, yeah.
Now, I always get a little suspicious when I see a company boasting about, double-digit growth.
hmm
But I think you mentioned that Divi's actually exceeded their own targets this time around.
Yeah, they aim high, but even they were surprised by how well they're doing.
Wow.
And this isn't a one-quarter fluke either. If you look
Oh,
at their 9-month figures, income is at 7,041 crores with a profit of 1,529 crores.
okay. So this suggests a sustained trend, not
Mhm.
just a temporary bump.
Right, and that's what makes me think, okay, what's really fueling this surge,
Yeah.
What's going on behind the scenes?
Well, and the press release, obviously, it's going to paint a pretty rosy picture.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But the earnings call transcript, that's where the analysts really start to dig into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, they try to get past the PR spin
Yeah.
and see what's really going on.
So what were the analysts zeroing in on? What were some of the big questions that came up?
Well, one thing that kept coming up was pricing pressure on generics.
Okay, so that's a concern.
Yeah, it's a constant battle in that market.
Yeah.
You've got competition driving prices down all the time.
Yeah.
But, to their credit, Divi's acknowledges this.
Okay.
And they highlight that their volume growth is robust.
So they're selling more, even if the profit per unit might be less?
Precisely. They're holding on to that market share, even though it's a tough environment.
Okay, so they're holding steady in the generics market.
Yeah.
But they're also making this big move with the new Canada facility, right?
Oh, yeah. That's the really interesting part.
And from what I saw in the press release, it's massive.
It is. It's huge and complex.
Yeah.
Like it's a phased rollout.
Okay.
Currently, only the first phase is partially operational.
Wow.
They're expecting the full launch in about 6 months.
So it's still early days.
Yeah, very early.
But what struck me as really fascinating was the focus on, what was it called? Backward integration.
Yeah, backward integration. That's a key part of their strategy for Canada, at least initially.
So what does that actually mean? Like, break that down for us.
Okay, so basically, Divi's is starting to produce their own starting materials, the raw ingredients they need to make their drugs.
Oh, okay. So instead of relying on outside suppliers.
Right. They're bringing a lot of that production in-house,
Makes sense.
it's a smart move for a couple of reasons.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, first of all, it can give them more control over their supply chain, right?
Yeah.
They make sure they have what they need when they need it.
Supply chain issues.
Exactly. And second, it can lead to better quality control.
Okay.
They can set their own standards and make sure everything meets their specifications.
So it's a win-win, better control and potentially better quality.
Yeah, on paper it looks that way.
But, I'm sure the analysts are thinking about the impact on costs too, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, these new facilities, they're expensive to build.
They are very capital intensive.
And And expensive to run, I imagine.
Definitely.
So how is this going to affect their margins?
Well, that's the big question.
Right.
And, the analysts were grilling the executives, asking about, how this is going to affect their profitability.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there's always that ramp up period with new facilities, right? So, it's not like they're going to flip a switch and suddenly it's all, profits.
Yeah, it takes time.
It'll be interesting to see how quickly Canada starts contributing to their bottom line.
So Canada is this big, exciting question mark for everyone.
Yeah, it really is. Everyone's watching it closely.
But as I was going through the transcript of the earnings call, I kept seeing this other term pop up, GLP-1s.
Oh, GLP-1s?
What are those? And why should we care about those?
GLP-1s. Now, this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, you've piqued my interest.
GLP-1s are the key ingredients for a hot new class of drugs for diabetes and weight loss.
Ooh, okay.
And I'm not talking about, your average weight loss fad here.
Right.
These are serious pharmaceuticals with the potential to really revolutionize how we treat those conditions.
Okay, so why are analysts so excited about them?
Well, some analysts are predicting this market could reach $50 billion by 2030.
$50 billion.
Yeah, that's not just huge, that's astronomical.
All right, so how does Divis fit into all of this?
Well, what's remarkable is that Divis isn't just kind of dipping their toes in the GLP-1 pool. They're diving in headfirst into the entire supply chain,
Really?
They're making the basic building blocks, the fragments, and even the final complex peptide molecules themselves.
So they're not just making one ingredient, they're making like the whole kit.
It's like they're building this pharmaceutical Lego set.
Okay.
And they've got all the pieces.
Wow.
While most of their competitors are still trying to figure out the instructions,
That's a great analogy. So they're setting themselves up to be like the go-to supplier for anyone who wants to develop GLP-1 drugs.
Right, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
They're being so secretive about the specifics.
Yeah, I noticed that. They're not saying which molecules they're making or who their clients are or even how much revenue this is generating.
And it's driving the analysts crazy.
Yeah, I bet. So what do you think is the reasoning behind that?
It screams strategic silence to me, you know?
Interesting.
Like they're in the very early stages of something that could be huge, and they don't want to tip their hand just yet.
Okay, so they're playing their cards close to their chest.
Exactly. Likely, they're trying to secure their advantage before the competition catches on.
It's like a high-stakes poker game, and Divis is holding their cards close.
Exactly. And think about it, right?
Yeah.
What if these new GLP-1 drugs really hit the market?
Yeah.
And they live up to all the hype.
Yeah.
And suddenly demand explodes.
Yeah.
Everyone needs those key ingredients. And Divis is the only one who can deliver the quality and the quantity that's needed.
Yeah, then they're in a really powerful position.
Then they're not just a supplier, they're a kingmaker. Pharmaceutical companies are, knocking down their doors, begging for a piece of the action.
Wow.
They can essentially dictate terms.
They hold all the cards?
They hold the keys to the kingdom, so to speak.
That's incredible. But wouldn't that be a risky strategy, though? To put so many eggs in this one basket? Like, what if these GLP-1 drugs don't live up to the hype?
Well, you're right. There are always risks.
Yeah.
The pharmaceutical world it's notoriously unpredictable.
Right.
I mean, what if a competitor comes out with a more efficient way to synthesize those GLP-1s, undercutting Divis on price?
Yeah, or what if, a major player, like a Chinese firm, decides to enter the market aggressively?
Oh, yeah, good point.
Suddenly the game changes, right?
Absolutely. Even with their impressive vertical integration, they're not immune to competition.
So it sounds like they're walking a tightrope.
A bit, yeah.
Balancing this huge opportunity with some very real risks.
Yeah, I mean, and even with the best planning, there are always those external factors that can throw a wrench in the works, right?
Yeah.
What if there's a sudden shortage of a key raw material?
Right.
Or a natural disaster disrupts their supply chain?
Yeah, things you can't control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, these are things that no company can fully control.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that even the most, solid-looking businesses are still vulnerable to those black swan events.
Right.
The things that you just can't even anticipate.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, we've all seen how a sudden shift in consumer demand or a global pandemic or even, a geopolitical crisis can just turn everything upside down.
Yeah, that's the reality of operating in a complex and interconnected world.
Exactly. So So how do we weigh all of this? How do we make sense of Divi's position, their potential, and the risks that they're facing?
Well, like I said, I'm not in the business of giving financial advice, but I think what's important to remember is that Divis is operating from a position of strength.
Right.
I mean, they have a strong track record.
Yeah.
They have a smart strategy. They're clearly thinking long term,
Mm-hmm.
and they're willing to make these bold moves, like investing so heavily in Canada
Yeah.
and diving headfirst into this GLP-1 market, which, it could pay off in a huge way.
But like you said, there are no guarantees.
Not at all. It's
Yeah.
it's high risk, high reward.
Yeah, high risk, high reward.
Which is the case with any investment, really.
Yeah.
It's always a balancing act.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We talked about their impressive financials.
Uh-huh.
We talked about their strategic investments, the potential of these GLP-1 drugs, the challenges they might face.
Yeah.
So if we had to sum it all up, like, what's the story of Divis Laboratories right now?
Well, I'd say Divis is a company at a crossroads.
Okay.
They're riding high on their success in generics, but they're also making these big bets on these emerging markets
Right.
that could completely reshape their future
Yeah.
and potentially the future of the pharmaceutical industry itself.
And they're doing it all while trying to, be responsible corporate citizens, which adds this whole other, layer of complexity and intrigue to their story.
Definitely does.
It's a fascinating story, and it really will be interesting to see how it all unfolds.
I'll be watching closely, that's for sure.
All right, so let's dive a little deeper into those GLP-1 drugs then,
Yeah, let's explore that world a bit more.
because it really does feel like the key to understanding where Divis might be headed in the future.
I think so, yeah. It's a really exciting area of drug development right now.
Okay, well let's unpack it then.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so GLP-1s, you mentioned that they're ingredients for these like new generation of drugs for diabetes and obesity.
Mhm.
For those of us who aren't scientists, can you kind of break it down? Like, why are these GLP-1 drugs generating so much buzz? What's the big deal?
It's not just like they're slightly better than what we already have.
Okay.
This is a whole new approach.
Oh,
So GLP-1s, they work by like mimicking a naturally occurring hormone in the body that helps regulate blood sugar
Okay.
and appetite.
So it's tackling like the root cause.
Yeah, and what's really exciting is some of the early studies are showing that they're not only incredibly effective for managing type 2 diabetes,
Yeah.
but they also have this huge potential for weight loss.
Yeah, no wonder analysts are predicting that $50 billion market.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where Divi's strategy gets really interesting, right?
Also.
So remember, they're not just making the final GLP-1 molecules.
Right.
They're producing the protected amino acids, the fragments, the building blocks.
Yeah, it's like the Lego set analogy.
It is. It's like they're building a pharmaceutical Lego set, and
Right.
they have all the pieces.
And everyone else is still trying to find the instructions.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so they're setting themselves up to be like the supplier, the must-have supplier for anyone who wants to develop GLP-1 drugs.
Yeah,
But they're so secretive about it.
I know.
Like frustratingly secretive.
It's true.
Like they won't say which molecules they're making, who they're working with, how much money they're making.
And it's driving the analysts crazy.
I bet. So what do you think is going on there?
Well, I think it really suggests they're in the early stages of these partnerships
Okay.
and deals that have the potential to be like massively lucrative, and they're just not ready to show their hand yet
Yeah.
because, they want to secure their advantage before everyone else catches on.
Right. It's like a high stakes poker game.
It is.
And Divis is holding all the cards.
Holding them.
Okay, so picture this. Those GLP-1 drugs, they hit the market, they live up to the hype, and suddenly demand explodes. Everyone needs these ingredients, and Divis is the only one who can deliver.
Right, and at the scale that's needed.
They become like essential.
They do.
They're not just a supplier anymore. They're like a kingmaker.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Wow, that's a powerful position to be in.
It is.
But wouldn't it be risky to put so many eggs in one basket? Like, what if these GLP-1 drugs, what if they don't live up to the hype?
Yeah, that's always a possibility, right?
Or what if someone else figures out a cheaper way to make them?
Well, you're right. There are always risks. The pharmaceutical landscape, it's constantly shifting,
Yeah.
New technologies are emerging, regulations are changing, unexpected competitors pop up.
Oh.
So it's You can never be completely certain.
So Divis isn't naive to that they know this is a risk.
Yeah, and remember, they're still a powerhouse in generics.
Right.
They're not abandoning that market.
Yeah.
And they're expanding into other areas like nutraceuticals.
Pharmaceuticals, okay.
So, those food-derived products with potential health benefits.
So they're diversifying their portfolio.
They are. They're hedging their bets, so to speak,
Right.
while still positioning themselves to capitalize on this potentially massive opportunity with GLP-1s.
So it's a smart strategy. It's like balancing,
It is.
But what I find really interesting is, we've been talking about the financials and market share and strategy,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, these GLP-1 drugs, if they succeed, we're talking about potentially impacting millions of lives.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
And one that often gets overlooked when we get caught up in the numbers and the business side of things.
Yeah.
We're talking about potentially life-changing treatments for diabetes and obesity. I mean, these are conditions that affect a significant portion of the global population. And they cause immense suffering.
Yeah.
So if Divis plays a key role in bringing these new drugs to market, they're not just generating profits, they're potentially contributing to a global health solution.
Yeah. That adds a whole other dimension to their story. It's not just business.
Yeah.
It's about improving lives.
Yeah, and it's not just lip service either.
Yeah.
If you look closely at their earnings call transcript,
Yeah.
they actually highlight their efforts to improve education and healthcare in the communities around their manufacturing facilities.
Oh, why?
So they're not just extracting profits, they're investing in the well-being of the people around them.
That's really encouraging to hear.
It is. It's a reminder that businesses can and should strive to be a force for good in the world.
Absolutely. So we've got this picture of Divis, a company with deep expertise, a knack for strategic silence,
Oh, yeah.
a willingness to bet big on these emerging opportunities,
Yeah.
and this commitment to being responsible corporate citizens.
It's a compelling narrative.
It is. But it's still unfolding, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, the question now is, what challenges might they face along the way? What could potentially derail these plans?
Right. There are always those what ifs.
Yeah, let's dive into those what if scenarios.
Okay.
Because the pharmaceutical world is full of surprises.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen next.
So Divis is like making these big bets, right? And they could pay off big time.
Huge. Yeah.
But the pharmaceutical industry, man, it's so unpredictable.
Yeah, really is.
What are some of the things that could go wrong? Like, what are the pitfalls that could really throw them off course?
Well, I think one of the big things that, keeps pharmaceutical executives up at night is the regulatory landscape.
Oh, right.
It's a heavily regulated industry.
Yeah.
And even, small changes can have a big impact. So
Yeah.
like what if new regulations are put in place that make it more expensive to produce generics?
Oh, that would hurt their margins.
Yeah, it could really squeeze them.
Yeah.
Or what if there are like delays in getting approval for the Canada facility to manufacture certain drugs?
Right, because they're investing so much money based on the current rules.
Yeah, millions, maybe even billions.
And if those rules change, it could really mess things up.
For sure.
So, okay, regulations, that's one thing. What about competition?
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
That's going to be a constant concern, right?
It is. The pharmaceutical world is cutthroat.
Yeah.
What if a rival company figures out a more efficient way to synthesize those GLP-1s?
Right, and they can suddenly undercut Divis on price.
Exactly. Or what if like a major player, maybe a Chinese firm, decides to just enter the market really aggressively?
Yeah, things could change pretty quickly.
They could.
Yeah.
Even with all of Divi's impressive vertical integration, they're not immune to competition.
So it really is a tightrope walk.
It is.
Balancing these big opportunities with some very real risks.
Absolutely. And even with the best planning in the world,
Yeah.
there are always those external factors that can really throw a wrench in things.
Yeah, like what? Like, give me an example.
Well, I mean, what if there's a sudden shortage of a key raw material?
Oh, right.
Something they need for their manufacturing process,
Yeah.
or what if there's like a natural disaster that disrupts their supply chain?
Yeah, things you can't predict.
Yeah, these are things that no company can fully control.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that even the strongest looking businesses are still vulnerable to those like those black swan events.
Right. Totally. The things you can't even anticipate.
Yeah, we've all seen how like a sudden change in consumer demand
Mm.
or a global pandemic or even a geopolitical crisis
Mhm.
can just turn everything upside down.
Absolutely. That's the reality of operating in such a complex and interconnected world.
Okay, so how do we how do we weigh all this? You
Hmm.
know, like how do we make sense of Divi's position, their potential, and all these risks they're facing?
Well, like I've said before, I'm not in the business of giving financial advice,
Right.
but I think what's important to remember is that Divi's is operating from a position of strength.
Okay.
They have a strong track record,
Hmm.
they've got a smart strategy, and they're clearly thinking long term,
Okay.
and they're willing to make those big, bold
Yeah,
moves.
like with the Canada facility,
Exactly. Or diving headfirst into this GLP-1 market.
which could, it could pay off big.
It could, but yeah, like you said, there are no guarantees. It's high risk, high reward.
So, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We talked about their financials, their strategic investments, the potential of these GLP-1 drugs, all the challenges they're facing.
Yeah.
If we had to kind of sum it all up, like what's the story of Divis Laboratories right now?
I think the story of Divi's is a company at a crossroads.
Okay.
They're riding high on their success with generics,
Yeah.
but they're also making these big bets on these emerging markets that could really reshape their future
Yeah.
and potentially the future of the pharmaceutical industry as a whole.
And they're trying to do it all while being, responsible corporate citizens, which adds this whole other, layer of intrigue to their story.
It does. It does.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, and I'm really curious to see how it all unfolds.
Me too. I'll be watching closely.
All right, everyone. Well, there you have it, a deep dive into the world of Divis Laboratories.
It's been a fun one.
It has. We've gone way beyond the headlines,
Hmm.
explored the nuances, the potential, and the challenges,
Yep.
and hopefully you're walking away with a much deeper understanding of this company
That's the goal.
and what their journey might tell us about the future of pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, it's an exciting time in the industry.
It is. And remember, this is just the beginning of the conversation, right?
Right.
So keep digging, keep asking questions, keep exploring. There's a whole world of fascinating information out there waiting to be discovered.
And that's what we love about the deep dive.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Giving you the tools and the insights to become more informed,
Mhm.
more engaged with the world around you.
Absolutely.
So keep learning, keep exploring, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.
See ya.